We had a few issues with the old dump truck. We had a brake line blow on it. Brake pedal got real soft real fast. I'll see if I can show you guys where it's at. So there's a line that runs across on the axle here and goes to a junction and then connects to this hose. You can see the hose right here. Now this is the passenger side that goes to the caliper. I already removed the driver's side, which is the one that was the problem, and it's over there. I've got it up on the bench right now. I didn't get a video of taking it apart, but I'll get a video of putting it back together here. So here's our situation. I don't know if you can see, there's a tiny little spot in this line that blew, and it was actually in the hard line. The problem was that hard line connects to here. That is not a fitting. So this rubber hose with this block on it is connected to the hard line there. When I went to remove the hard line from the block that's on the rear that splits the brakes, the fitting actually just started spinning in there. The threads of the fitting actually self-destructed. They completely fell apart. So I attempted to get this block off the rear axle. The vent tube for the axle is part of the brake block. Obviously it was rotted out really bad, and it actually broke off of the axle. In the process of that, the tube fell off of here, which is the brake hose that comes from the line. So I attempted to pull that apart, and it crumbled at this end along with the tab on it. It actually went that direction. So one thing leads to another. You end up needing more parts, and I'm actually glad that that stuff fell apart, because we went down to the local Napa store and we got pretty much everything we need, including this tube that goes onto the breather for the axle, and it goes through that block, if you can see that. Luckily, the piece that was down in the axle, this was down in the axle, it was actually plugged anyway. This is supposed to be the vent tube. This came out very, very easily. I put an easy out down in there and just turned it out real nice and easy. I was very happy about that. So we're going to get these pieces put back together on the rear axle and hopefully get these brakes working again. So here we are underneath the truck. As you can see, this is this brake line coming from the front, and that fitting's still decent on there. This is where that block was that came off of there, and this is what's going back onto that position. We're going to thread this back in to that spot, and hopefully, oh yeah, that threads in. Good, good, good. And then this hose actually runs around, and the bracket that it stayed in up here actually came off of there. So I'm probably going to take some metal and make a bracket to go up on there. But then this should thread into here. And then from there we've got the original brake line from the passenger side that comes into this block, and then our new fitting will come into that block from this side and run back around over to the caliper over here. So I'm going to need 2 hands to put that on, so I'm going to stop the video for a moment and I'll be right back.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to leave this a little bit loose. I'm not sure how this needs to be indexed. When I took the old one off, I think I bent this line that went to the passenger side a little bit. So there is a trick to these fittings, especially brake fittings, because they're small. When you're putting a brake fitting in, like with a new line to an old block or even two new lines together, or in this case an old line to a new block. In order to tighten this up and get it to seat properly, you need to snug it and then bring it loose again. And re-snug it and loosen it up again. The end on that fitting, and I'm not sure if you guys can see it in the video here, there's a flare on the end of this line. When that tightens down, it'll actually crush that flare a little bit. And this is a metal to metal seat, and those two have to seat together and not leak. So you need it to actually crush a little bit in order to seal to that. So I'm going to snug that a little bit more, loosen it one more time, and snug that up. And usually when you do that and you go to bleed your brakes, you won't have any leaks. But I'm gonna check these spots where I'm connecting those once they get brake fluid in them. I'm gonna double check them to make sure that they aren't leaking. So this piece goes down here, and I'm gonna feed it through this fitting first. Okay, so we've got the block in, we've got the upper hose in. Now we're gonna get this line that goes out to the caliper in place. And I must have had this block pretty close to being indexed properly, because this line didn't have to be bent at all, and it lined right up, which is great. That's what we want to see, is parts that work with each other. So now I've got a new line with a new fitting going into a new block. So this one's even more important that I loosen it and then tighten it again to get it to seat properly. Go. That should be seated there. I'm going to tighten that upper fitting. That doesn't need to be overly tight. This is just a vent for the rear axle, and we'll put the tube on that when we get finished here. So now this line runs down. There's a little bracket that bolts to the axle to hold that line in place so it doesn't vibrate around. And I'm looking at the other side to see how this line is supposed to be run to the caliper. It's a little different than what I'm used to. I did leave the banjo bolt and fittings on the caliper when I took it apart. Some brake fluid pouring out of there, that's good. So this will come around like this, if you guys can see that. And I will put this banjo bolt through there. You have to make sure that you get the copper washer, one on each side of that banjo bolt, because that is what seals that piece together. Without that, you will have a massive leak on your caliper. This truck is a 2001 Dodge. The wonderful thing that most of the auto manufacturers did in the early 2000s, they used metric and standard on a lot of things. It's a mixture of the two. So it makes it wonderful to try to figure out which wrench set to bring out. Guarantees that you won't have what you need every time. Alright, so same thing there. We'll loosen it, snug it back up a little bit. That should be just fine now. Alright, so all the lines are on. The next thing we need to do is come in here, we'll loosen up this bleeder, make sure that that's broken free. These calipers are fairly new, I put those on last year, so that shouldn't be a big problem to get that off of there. I'm not sure I even have the right wrench for it. I sure do. And hopefully that comes off of there. Oh yeah. So that'll loosen up nicely there. And our next step is to get some brake fluid in it and finish bleeding the brakes. We are up under the hood here at the master cylinder reservoir. And when this brake line blew, I was lucky enough that I was actually here on the property at the top of the farm. And when the brake line blew back there, I felt the pedal drop and I knew something was going on. And I only pumped it a couple times. So as you can see here, the reservoir, I didn't shoot much of the brake fluid out the back, which is good, because that means that there's still fluid in the system and then we didn't get a bunch of air up in the system. So I'm going to top this off. We're pretty close to it for now. And then we're going to bleed both of those rear brakes out. The front one should be fine. There was no opening in the front system, and actually there are two separate systems, one for the rear, one for the front. So it's separate lines coming out of the master cylinder. So as long as this didn't drop the whole way down, we don't have any air in the system for the front. So the front should be just fine. We'll bleed the back out, and we should be good to go. So, okay, so we're to the part where you need a helper for this. Can't do this myself. All right, I've got the brake bleeders right here. What we're going to do is we're going to have Leanne is up in the truck. She's going to pump on the brakes a few times here. Go ahead and pump. And then she's going to hold the brake pedal. She's going to tell me when she's holding, and I'm going to open that bleeder valve.
Holding.
Closed. Pump again.
Holding.
Closed. Pump again.
Holding.
So hopefully here, we're going to get some fluid coming out of that soon. Pump again.
Holding.
All right, we've got an issue here. Go ahead and let up. We've got brake fluid coming out down here, so we have a problem right in that spot. We're going to have to take this banjo bolt back out and try again. Okay, so here's my problem. I wasn't paying attention. There's a small notch that sticks out on there that is actually supposed to be turned the other direction. And I wasn't paying any attention to it when I put it on there. This block is supposed to go in this direction. So I'm going to put my bolt back on there. And we're going to try to get that started back in the caliper. And hopefully we'll get it to seal this time. Okay, so that's tight. We should be good there. So we're gonna try to bleed again. Go ahead and pump it up.
Holding.
There we go. It's closed. Pump again.
Holding.
It's closed. Pump again.
Holding.
We're just starting to get fluid, just a dribble. Pump again and hold.
Holding.
Oh, now we got fluid coming. Hang on 1 second. All right, pump and hold.
Holding.
And pump and hold.
Holding.
We're still getting a little bit of air. Pump and hold one more time.
Holding.
Much better. Okay, stay there. So we've got that one pretty much bled out. We're going to come around to this other side here and try to do the same in case we got any air. And I don't think we did, but I don't want to take any chances when it comes to brakes. So go ahead, pump it and hold. One more time.
Holding.
There was a little air. One more time.
Holding.
Great. How do the brakes feel?
Pretty good, I think.
Firm?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the next step here is to get in the truck and fire it up and take it for a short test drive to see if these brakes are working properly. And if the test drive goes well, I will come back down, I'll double check all the fittings to make sure nothing's leaking and top off the fluid, and we should be done. And the dump truck will live to see another day. I'll probably get some brake clean and spray this off so it's nice and dry so I can make sure that there's no leaks anywhere. I'm looking at that block right now and I don't see any leaks anywhere on it. I still need to get that vent tube on here as well. So we took it out on a little test drive and looks like there's no leaks. I've got everything wiped down nice. I took a look up on top of the axle there and not looking like we've got any leaks anywhere, which is great. It's also getting dark out here. And while we're out here, it was a good time to take a look at the lights. I like to check the lights whenever I'm out. And I wanted to show you something here. So, when you turn on the turn signal, it's flashing like that. And a lot of times what happens, you get something like this. It's flashing very, very quickly. And what that usually tells you is that you've got a bulb out somewhere. So it's not the back's working just fine. This is one of those things I like to check all my equipment out when I'm working on it. And I'm noticing here we've got a right-hand marker light that is not working. So the driver's side's working just fine, but it looks like that passenger side probably is going to need a bulb because it's flashing quickly. It's an easy, quick way to diagnose whether your turn signals are working or not. Brakes are working fine. She'll be ready to go next time we need it.